Hi guys, to start this lesson we're going to do a quick quiz just for fun, and we're going to ask what could you bring to a war zone. So you need to just make a note of which letter best suits you. So question 1, you've just found out that you're going over the top tomorrow, like what happened at the end of Blackadder. Do you A, start telling the men how to manage the attack? B, say, do you think there'll be cake in their trench? C, say, oh well, I've been waiting to die, time to get it over with and then I can have a good sleep for once. Or D, cry into your trench and worry for your fellow men. So just write down whether you're A, B, C or D, or the one that you're closest to. Okay, 2. You crouch behind a building and you need to get across the road. There are guns being fired in your path. Do you A, run out first, like a leader? B, dance your way across, why not? C, try to work out a clever way across? Or D, make sure all your fellow men get across safely first? This is a very sexist quiz, assuming that only men are soldiers. Number 3. It's dinner time in the trench. You're eating gruel with rats at your feet. Do you A, eat it and pretend it's yummy? There should not be an apostrophe in your... Oh no, there should. It's okay. B, declare it's better than your mum's cooking. C, say it sucks but it's better than rats. Or D, spend the meal talking about how much you miss ice cream and cake. There's a cake theme. Number 4, gas. You see it, that was a rubbish exclamative. Gas! That was even worse. You see it crawling across no man's land. What do you do? A, do you put on your gas mask and then help others? B, pretend you're Darth Vader. I'm not gonna do it. I nearly did it. I'm not gonna do it. C, sit calmly with your arms folded and your mask on, waiting for it. Or D, frantically run about panicking. C is definitely what my dad would do. Okay, number 5. There's 3 more questions. You're talking to your friend Fred about his wife and suddenly a bomb drops and explodes and Fred is blown up. Do you A, say a prayer and check the rest of the men? B, say that she didn't seem that bad, as in his wife? Or C, say typical, I liked that guy? Or D, do you cry for 4 days? It's very precise. 6, you are walking back to the nurse's station to check on a friend and a shell comes down and your leg is blown off. Do you A, try to walk to a doctor while ensuring you are keeping in position? B, say, well, sorry, that should say well, that's the end of our friendship. C, think, at least I get off the front line. Or D, wail against God, the world and the war. And 7, finally, you're writing a letter home to your parents from the front line. Do you A, tell them how great the men are and the advances you are making? B, tell them it's better than a seaside holiday? C, tell them you're doing fine and you miss home? Or D, cry, cry, cry? Okay, so add up your letters and see which letter you have the most of. Just a disclaimer, this is completely made up by me and is not in any way a scientific or psychological real quiz that tells you how you would cope in a war zone, and obviously it's very focused on World War I style of warfare, which hopefully will never happen again. Okay, so if you got mostly A's, then you are a natural born leader. You would be brave and lead the way, inspiring your men. If you're mostly B's, you are the joker of the group. You would entertain the men and be well liked. C's, you'd be the realist. You would keep your head during the raids and you would stay mentally stable. And D's, you might not be ready for war, but that's only because you are super caring. You would care too much about your friends and be very upset if they were injured, like Hufflepuff. Okay, so that was just a quick quiz just to get us started today and kind of get you starting to think about what it would have been like and how you might have reacted in that situation. By the end of this week, you will get a chance to do some creative writing, possibly where you put yourself in the trenches. So you can remember this quiz if you get to do that. Okay, so today's focus is all about how to write an opinion article, and we are building on your speech writing skills that you did already, that you did before Easter / just after Easter, your opinions on war, which you wrote last week. So it should lead quite nicely on from what you've already been doing, and it is important that you do learn how to write an article in Year 9. because you haven't had a chance to do it yet, and it is one of the key things that we need you to be able to do, not just for your GCSE, but because you've all got the chance now to go and become your own bloggers and write your own articles online, so you need to make sure you can do it well. Alright, so you are tomorrow, or next lesson, whenever next lesson is, going to be given time to write your article. And this is your question. So you're going to write an article giving your views on war for your school website. So hopefully this will bring together everything that we did last week. So if you think back to sort of all the lessons you've done so far, if you have done each one, so you've got to see Blackadder and what life was like in the trenches, you got to read Private Peaceful for further ideas about World War One. You got to do your mood board and thought about the positives and negatives of war. And then you've done that video to see how war has changed through the ages. So you've been quite immersed in war. Now it's time for you to step back and think, well, where's my position in all this? What do I think about it? And obviously you can't write your opinion article, if you don't have clear views on war. So more on that in a second. The key skills that we're going to look at are these 6. So I'm not going to read them all out, but that's what I'm going to take you through now in this lesson. Okay, so just quickly to start off, the key differences between an article and a speech. If you can write this down as notes in your book, your title can be How to Write an Article, or if you finished your books, you can just do it online paper, but keep it safe, because like I said, you're going to be writing articles in year 10 and 11 as well, so all of this will, it won't change. So speeches, which you've already been writing, you can interact with your audience, obviously. You're speaking live, so you can use words like today and yesterday, and how are you, or I like your socks. And then also your ideas have to be adapted a lot more in a speech. You have to remember, we talked about, it has to be really easy to follow when you're listening, so you have to have a lot of broken down ideas and you have to keep referring back to things you've already said. In an article, those 3 things are different. So obviously you can't interact with them as you're writing. You're not going to get a reply as you're writing this article. You are only going to be able to interact with them after they've read it and via comments beneath the article, or they might contact you afterwards on social media. That's obviously assuming that it's an online article, not a published article in a newspaper, which in this case it is, because we're writing for a school website. You have no idea when your article will be read. Think of those annoying things you get on social media, like viral articles, and then you click on the link and it was actually 3 years ago. So, literally it could be 10 years time when someone's reading it. So you need to make sure that you avoid words like today, yesterday, because the reader will have no idea when those days were. So you need to use specifics, basically. So between 1 and 2, it's just about avoiding phrases like, how are you? And again, I like your socks, because you have no idea what socks your readers are wearing. They might not be wearing socks. I don't know why I'm obsessed with socks. Okay, number 3. You have readers, obviously, not listeners. So you can afford to be more complex in your ideas. You can trust that your readers, if they need to, can reread it. They can't do that in a speech. So whereas in your speech you might have broken things down a lot and kept referring back to things, you can say things like as mentioned above, but you don't have to as much in an article, because you just don't need to. The reader themselves can navigate your work. That's the beauty of writing. Okay, so these questions you may have seen last week, and they were the initial questions that we asked you to answer to get you thinking about your own opinions of war. Now obviously this is your springboard now for your opinion article. Now I just want you to pause on this slide for a second, and you can make notes on this. Go back to your answers from last week. You have learned or experienced a lot more things about war since you wrote the answers to these questions. So have any of your answers changed, or are any of your opinions more developed? Do you feel more strongly about anything than you did last Monday because of the experiences that you've had in your lessons since then? So if you just pause and have a think and write down some notes, I think that'd be really useful at this point. Okay, so hopefully you have already got in your head / in your notes a list of your opinions of things that you believe. And just before you write your article, you really need to sort of spend some time mind mapping or creating the kind of hierarchy flowchart that I've got there of all your opinions and kind of your initial thoughts, and kind of, you know, just getting everything on your head onto the page so that you can then organise it neatly into a nice organised article later on. So for example, this is just a list of potential opinions. So I believe that wars should only be fought if there's no other option. So you might have that opinion, excuse me, you might write it down, and then you might mind map off it, you know, why do you think this? Have you got an example? Have you got a counter argument for that? I believe that many wars from recent times have been fought for money rather than for a good reason. I believe in equality in war. I believe that those who fight for the country are brave and deserve recognition. I think World War II is the most justifiable war. So they're just, sorry, I worry that soldiers aren't looked after when they return. They're just some example opinions, which would obviously become your opening topic sentences to paragraphs in an article. But once you've got, the reason I'm asking you to get all those down now, excuse me, it's because later on you're going to be needing to organise them into a nice order that makes sense for your article. So just get them all down, and spend some time now just pausing and generating some opinions. Okay, once you've done that, then we need to go through now how to develop those opinions. It's not enough to just to say, I believe wars should only be fought if there's no other option, because it's not very convincing. You just tell me what you think without actually persuading me or actually telling me anything about your viewpoint. So I'm going to go through a few skills now that you do need to include, and it was the same as with your speeches as well. So you can jot these down under the subheading, how to develop your opinions. So number one, make sure your opinion is written in an authoritative tone. So that one, I believe wars should only be fought, is not particularly convincing, because I'm saying I believe, you know, that's not persuasive. We need to be acting as if it's, you know, disguising our opinion as a fact. Two, you need to use facts and statistics to support your opinion. Now, I'm going to scrap what I've just said. You don't need to, but it's a good idea to. If it's relevant, don't just shove them in if it's not. And you can make them up for the sake of this article. But of course, you know, if you've got Google at your fingertips, it is worth finding out the true facts. Give a personal anecdote or story justifying your opinion. This doesn't need to be true either, and it doesn't need to be, I say personal anecdote, but it doesn't need to be one that you personally have experienced. You can tell someone else's. Sorry, I'm running out of breath. Speaking too fast, clearly. You can give someone else's story as well. It doesn't have to be your own personal, like, family experience or whatever. The one thing it does need to do, though, is justify your opinion. It's almost like an example of why your opinion is true. Obviously, in this case, you might want to find like a real life soldier's story or something like that. Give specific examples, so you might give specific wars and specific battles or specific things that happened in the wars. Use humour if it's relevant and appropriate, or emotive language. The more you do that, the more you're going to make your readers feel something, and people will agree with you with their hearts, not their heads. So you really need to get them emotionally on the same side as you by either, you know, connecting with them, making them like you, or by using that emotive language and making them feel empathy or, you know, feel like they want to agree with you. Use a counter argument. So make sure you kind of explain why the opposing view isn't correct, and you can quote an expert as well. Okay, so I'm going to go through those now, those 7 skills, and give you an example from mine. Now, as long as you've got that down as a list, you don't need to write down my model or anything. It'd take you forever. But I do want you to just pay attention. Like, I'm just giving you examples. If you're really, really not sure on any of these 7 skills, you could just jot down the example I use in my article if it's not too long. Okay, so I'm starting with this opinion that I believe wars should only be fought if there's no other option. Okay, and I'm going to turn it into this. This is not all of it. Unless you love death, destruction, violence, and misery, it goes without saying that wars should only be fought if where there's no other option. Why would we risk the lives of our parents, of the people we love, if there was a safer way to do it? I have a cousin Oh, I could change that to uncle. I have an uncle. We'll call him Fred, because apparently I'm obsessed with the name Fred, who desperately wanted to go to America. So we all clubbed together and bought him a surfboard so he could surf his way across the Atlantic to America. He lasted 3 minutes before he went to join the Titanic. Of course, this never happened. Instead, because we're not a sadistic family capable of manslaughter, we clubbed together to buy him a much safer plane ticket. Because placing people in danger should only happen when there's no other option. Random capitalization there, sorry. Okay, so what have I used there to develop my argument? So, firstly, my use of a light-hearted / humorous tone. You can see here that I've changed it to uncle. I just forgot to change it from cousin. I'll explain why I've done that in a second when I'll go through another one of the skills. So we've got unless you love death, destruction, violence and misery, which is a light-hearted opening because nobody's going to say, yes, I love those things. So it's kind of ironic. It's an ironic opening. We've then got, I say all, I wasn't donating my birthday money. Again, humorous tone. It's just adding a bit of personality, a bit of liveliness into the article, giving me as a writer a personality who's a bit selfish and isn't going to give the birthday money away. But also, you know, at that age, why would you? Birthday money is very rare. Excuse me. It's very rare for some of us. He lasted 3 minutes before he went to join the Titanic. It's just a funnier way of, you know, saying that he drowned, which is not funny at all. And then, you know, this really exaggerated image or hyperbolic image of us not being a sadistic family capable of manslaughter. Again, it's like stating the obvious, so it's quite light-hearted and humorous. This isn't about being like laugh out loud funny. It's just about being, and it's entertaining, isn't it? Which is essentially what articles in some way need to be. There's just, not all the time, but there's just two approaches. Think about what would make you click on a link from social media to spend 5 minutes reading someone's article. You'd either have to be entertained or thoroughly emotionally involved or interested in the topic. Okay, I've also used a story anecdote of my uncle, Fred. Little story there. Obviously, I've made that up. I even admit that I've made it up. That didn't really happen, so feel free to do the same. Try and make it realistic. Like if I hadn't said, of course, this never happened, then that would not be a good anecdote because it's not realistic. Strong opening, it goes without saying, is much stronger than I believe. So try to use phrases like that in your article. Right, so we've used those 3 skills, but we still need to use these last 4. Facts and stats, specific examples, counter-argument, quote, and expert. So I'm going to carry on now. I'm going to keep developing. Now, just to stress, you don't have to use all 7 skills for every single opinion that you have. It's just about giving you a lot of options to pick and choose from so that you can develop every opinion, like hopefully you've done in your speeches. So, starting with a counter-argument. You could argue that war is often a quicker solution to the world's problems than diplomacy, which can often take leaders round in circles. But as students of St Hilda's, can you really take this stance? Don't we believe as a community in the value of human life at all costs? So that counter-argument, to create one, you have to first of all think, well, what would people argue against me? And I think a good argument against that what I've said is that war, you know, if you take a diplomatic route, it can take years and sometimes you don't even get anywhere. So I've stated that you could argue that, but you need that but in there. You need that kind of however, although sort of approach where you then say why that's incorrect. And here I've kind of taken an emotive approach. I've tried to appeal to our sense of spirituality and morality as students of St Hilda's, that we wouldn't take that stance. So try to do something like that. I've quoted an expert in red. Gandhi said, this is a real quote, in a gentle way you can shake the world. Now, if you are going to quote an expert, it is better to actually use a real quote. You don't want to make up things that other people have said. Unless, if you're going to make it up, you need to make up the expert as well. But try to comment on the quote as well. Don't just quote it. So I've said, you know, it's true. You don't have to go all guns blazing into a war zone to make the world a better place. And obviously that quote supports what my opinion is as well. Otherwise, it's not useful. and then specific example. So I'm not sure how much you know about the Iraq War or what your opinion on it is, but here's an example of what you could argue about Iraq. For example, imagine if instead of declaring war on Iraq, stricter UN sanctions were put in place, or a diplomatic route was taken to protect the people of Iraq. This war led to many Iraqis living poorer lives than they did before the invasion. It is also said to be responsible, at least initially it did, it's also said to be responsible for the creation of ISIS. Diplomacy would not have done that. So that's just an example of a specific war zone that kind of adds flavour to your argument. And then finally, specific war, not war zone. Finally, facts and statistics. If we had 179 UK servicemen would still be with us. So I did Google that and find out how many servicemen had fallen in Iraq. And that's quite a powerful end to the argument as well. That statistic is going to linger with the reader, so that's quite a nice structure as well. Okay, so they are the 7 skills that you need to use to develop an argument. And I do think this is the one, if you're going to prioritise any skill when you're writing, this is the one. This is the one that's really going to make your article persuasive, because you keep going and you're building a case for what your opinion is, and therefore you'll meet your purpose. Okay, the next skill was adapting your content for your audience. So obviously your audience is students from our school, so this is when you include words and phrases that are directly targeted to or relevant for them. And those words or phrases are called audience discourse markers. They mark who the audience is. So to do that, you just need to sort of, as you're writing, consider specifically your audience's interests, how they like to feel about war themselves, what will make that specific audience agree with you, like what values do they have, what will they care about, how old are they, what are their relationships. Now, this is an example, this is the reason, why I changed cousin to uncle, because I'm thinking I am a student writing for other students. My cousin is unlikely to be old enough to go to America on his own, so I changed it to uncle because I thought that was more relevant. I just forgot to do it on the first slide. Okay, so let's take a look, think back to my example that I've just taken you through, and let's just have a look at where it's really got really good audience discourse markers and where some of the audience, where it could be improved. So good examples. When I said I say all, I wasn't donating my birthday money, that feels like something that students in our school would relate to or could laugh at or think, oh, me neither. So that was why I put that in there. I don't know why you're speaking like this. We risk the lives of our parents. I was just taking into account there the fact that students of our school are obviously not old enough to go to war and risk their lives, so it would be their parents would be the primary thought of it. I could have put older siblings in there, or you know, I could have just said older family members, but at least it indicates that I know I'm speaking to teenagers. And also when I said on the second bit, as students of St Hilda's, can you really take this stance? So I'm actually literally saying the word students of St Hilda's, who are my audience, so it's very clear that I know who they are. And then what I'm doing is I'm manipulating what I know about the audience's values. I know that we as a community value human life, so I mean hopefully every community does. So I've manipulated that and I've used that information about my audience to make my writing more persuasive, and that will help you to write a really effective professional article. Okay, bad example. Now, this quote is really good. Like, obviously, it's a really good fact. But when I stepped back and thought about it, I thought, well, actually, if I'm writing to students of St Hilda's in Merseyside, I need to be kind of adapting that fact so that it's more focused on the people of Merseyside. So a better one would be 179 UK servicemen with 8 from Merseyside would still be with us. I actually Googled it and it was 8 servicemen who died from this area. So, you know, and then you could emotionally think about that in terms of you could walk past a family member on the street, etc. So do think about how you can trace these audience discourse markers and how you can adapt these examples for your own writing. Okay, how to organise your article. you are obviously going to, oh, sorry, can you jot these down as notes? And can you also, I forgot to say, can you just make sure that you've defined what audience discourse markers are, please, in your book? And maybe just do one or two examples. So next subheading will be how to organise your article. So you definitely need a headline, which summarises your key opinion in a snap way. I've invented a new phrase that should say snappy. You need to start with an engaging first line. So for example, a rhetorical question or a short, impactful sentence. You could start with a well-known phrase. Oh dear, I can't spell anything on this slide. That should say well-known, not well-known. For example, war, what is it good for, as the song goes. That's going to engage people in your article. And you are actually asking, what is it good for? Because you're giving your opinions on whether war is good. So make sure your ending is just as punchy. Really try and kind of make sure that you've got that really engaging start and end. And you can try to link back to your beginning. This is like a much higher level skill. So if you can link the ending to the beginning by developing it. So for example, so imagine you've started with war, what is it good for? You can then end with, so we can conclude that war is, oh my lord, that should say good. We can conclude that war is good for something, ending Hitler, for example. Oh, I'm just going to move on because that was so terrible. Hopefully you get the idea of what you could do. Number 4, start a new paragraph every time you move on to a different focus or new opinion. Please don't forget new paragraphs. It's worth saying actually that articles tend to have shorter paragraphs rather than longer paragraphs. Online especially, think about how difficult it is to scroll through a long paragraph online. But even traditionally newspapers would have very small paragraphs because they'd have quite small font. So that's something to consider. Make sure you use connectives to make it clear whether you're developing your argument, where you might use furthermore or therefore, or whether you're given an alternative. For example, if you use however, although, whereas, whilst. And make sure your opinions are organised in a sensible order. So I'm going to say a bit more about that now. So you don't need to write this down. This is just an example. So I'm going to go back to my initial list that I've already read through. These are what I took you through before. 6 potential opinions that I could shape into an article. Now, what you need to do is look for similarities, look for ways of grouping these together, and look at an effective order that you could put them in. So 1, 2, and 5 are all related to kind of when war is justified or when war should happen. So I'm going to keep those together. I'm going to, in my article, those 3 would be really nice ways to build on from each other. 4 and 6 are both about my opinion of soldiers and those who fight for the country. So again, I'm going to keep those together. And then kind of on its own is I believe in equality 1, number 3. So it can kind of build on 4 and 6 because it is still linked to the fact that, you know, there aren't many. I can link it to soldiers. You know, I can give my opinions on soldiers, and then I can say, well, but why are these all men? Or say there should be more female soldiers, or, you know, more opportunities at least. But one of the things that I would step back and think at this stage, and I hope you would do the same, is, well, you know, 1, 2, and 5, lovely. 4 and 6 and possibly 3, lovely. But do they feel like 2 separate articles? Maybe they do, because, you know, the bottom 3, I'm giving my opinions on the people who fight in war, or that sounds like I'm judging them. Of course, I'm not in a position to do that. But then I'm 1, 2, and 5, I'm very focused on is when wars are justified. So you might want to think when you start grouping your ideas together, actually, 1, 2, and 5 are enough for my article. That's enough to write it. That's enough to develop. I don't need 4, 5, and 4, 6, and 3. So make sure you go through that process and kind of don't be afraid to discount things that aren't going to fit nicely into your overall flow of your article. Okay, how to emphasize your opinions. Now, this is all about crafting your sentences, and I will put up as well the how to craft your sentences sheet that you might have done for speeches. So, use short sentences. If you use these for important information, they'll stand out and help your reader to focus on what you want to highlight. As that did, use short sentences. You can also use a yoke sentence. A yoke sentence is where you repeat the last words from the previous sentence. The previous sentence's ideas are then cemented further. See what I did there? You can use a triad sentence, which is 3 main clauses that are separated by semicolons. For example, this sentence I've just read, but also, war creates death, it creates destruction, it lasts for far too long. So it just creates that kind of pacey feel, again, adding emphasis, but make sure you use it for opinions that you want to stand out or ideas you want to stand out. You can use a one-line paragraph and it would be counterproductive to write anything else there, but it's basically, it's only going to stand out if you've got developed paragraphs either side, but where you really pin down an essential core idea or opinion that you want to highlight by just writing it in a short, snappy sentence in its own paragraph. And you can repeat can times 3 with cannot times 1. So for example, wars can stop invaders, wars can stop terrible dictators, wars can bring opportunities for a better future, wars cannot happen without destruction and a loss of life. So it emphasizes that cannot at the end, which is obviously what you would want to stand out. You can also make this into a bit more of a triad sentence. Obviously it wouldn't be triad because it's not got 3 parts, it's got 4, but you could replace those full stops with semicolons, and as long as you just crossed out your capital letters, that would be a really nice, effective, flowing sentence. Okay, so I've gone over these 6 key skills, tried to keep under 30 minutes nearly. So that's the kind of key skills that we're going to be looking for you to be using in your articles when you write them next lesson. So pause, go back if you need to, make sure you've got all the key notes in your book. And I hope that you enjoy writing it. I think it's a really good opportunity for you to step back and develop your own confidence really in discussing war and having informed opinions on it and knowing what you want to say about it. I hope that in our lifetime you'll never have to be involved in, putting pressure on an MP whether to vote for or against a war. But it's a really good opportunity, I think, at this stage to just step back and think, where do I stand on this? What's my take? Because I want you to go out into the world with a strong opinion. Thank you.